migration that would badly deplete the healthcare resources needed for our people. And so we are working very closely with Mexico, very, very closely with Canada. The relationship's never been better. We're all working toward the same goal. Our nation's top healthcare officials are extremely concerned about the grave public health consequences of mass, uncontrolled cross-border movement. And that would be mostly, and even beyond, but mostly during this global pandemic. Every week, our border agents encounter thousands of unscreened, unvetted, and unauthorized entries from dozens of countries, and we've had this problem for decades. For decades, you know the story, but now it's with the national emergencies and all of the other things that we've declared, we can actually do something about it. We're taking a very strong hold of that. And we have before, but this is now at a level that nobody's ever approached. In normal times, these massive flows place a vast burden on our healthcare system. But during a global pandemic, they threaten to create a perfect storm that would spread the infection to our border agents, migrants, and to the public at large. Left unchecked, this would cripple our immigration system, overwhelm our healthcare system, and severely damage our national security. We're not going to let that happen. So we have a lot of information, and they'll be discussing that in a moment. To confront these public health degrees, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has decided to exercise its authority under the Title 42 of the U.S. Code. Didn't get along, people that didn't like each other, they're now working together and maybe even in some cases learning about each other and liking each other. It's a nice thing. I invoked the Defense Production Act, and last night we put it into gear. We moved the National Response Coordination Center to the highest level of activists. I mean, if you take a look at what we did, the level of activation has been increased to a grade 1 level, which is the highest level. We're providing historic support to small businesses and to the states. The states need support. Normally they do this themselves, but because of the magnitude of it, the federal government has gotten very much involved in terms of getting the equipment they need. So we're helping them. It's a responsibility they have, but we are helping the states a lot. That's why the governors, I think, in every case have been impressed and very nice. We enacted legislation guaranteeing paid sick leave for workers at no cost to employers. And I think it's very important. So they get paid sick leave at no cost to employers. We're accelerating the use of new drug treatments. We're advancing legislation to give direct payments to hardworking families. Throughout our country, Americans from all walks of life are rallying together to defeat the unseen enemy striking our nation. In times of struggle, we see the true greatness of the American character, and we are seeing that. A lot of people are talking about it. We're in 141 countries, from what they're telling me, and some of those countries are really working in a unified manner, and they're working very unified with us, almost, I could say, a good number of them. Doctors and nurses are working nonstop to heal the sick. Citizens and churches are delivering meals to the needy. Truckers are making the long haul to keep shelves stocked. We've been dealing with the big stores and the big chains, Walmart. They've been fantastic, and others. They've all been fantastic. We've made it much easier for them to stock in terms of travel and travel restrictions. We're lifting restrictions so they can get their trucks on time. You're seeing very few empty shelves, and yet the amount of volume that they're doing is unprecedented because people want to have what they have to have, what they feel they have to have. And they're also buying in slightly smaller quantities, which is good, because we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here. So I want to thank all of those very great companies for working so well. Americans from every walk of life are coming together. And thanks to the spirit of our people, we will win this war. And we're winning, and we're going to win this war. America will triumph, and America will rise higher than ever before. We'll be stronger than ever before. And we've learned a lot. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot about relying on other countries. And I can say that I think in both a very good and a very bad way. Some good things came out of it, and some not so good things came out of it. So I'd like to move now to invite our team to provide information on the new measures to prevent viral spread at our borders. And I'll start by asking Secretary of State Pompeo to speak. He's doing a fantastic job, and like everyone else, he's been working very, very long and very, very hard, and he's doing the other more normal jobs of a great Secretary of State. But he got tied into this like everybody else, and he's been really doing a fantastic job. Mike, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I address the efforts that we've been engaged in to push back against the Chinese virus, I want to assure the American people that, as President Trump just said, your State Department, your entire national security team is staying focused on the other diplomatic challenges around the world. Those include reducing risk to America from Afghanistan, holding the Iranian regime accountable for its malign activity, and our counterterrorism efforts against ISIS remain a priority for our team. Our number one priority international travel from U.S. citizens should be avoided. In countries where commercial departure options remain available, U.S. citizens who reside in the United States should arrange for immediate return to the United States unless they're prepared to remain abroad for an extended time. If you choose to travel internationally, your travel plans may well be severely disrupted. And finally, I want to talk about the disinformation that people are seeing. both on Twitter and around the world, some of it coming from government, some of it coming from other individuals. Just urge everyone, as they're seeing information that at one time suggested somehow this virus emanated from the United States Army, this information about lockdowns that are taking place. Every American, indeed, people all around the world should where they turn to for information is a reliable source and not a bad actor trying to create and flow information that they know is wrong. This is a tough fight. The American people are tougher. Our diplomatic teams are working around the clock to help them keep safe both home and abroad. And we're showing once again the global leadership that America has always delivered. It's been great to see countries around the world rally behind what President Trump and our team are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. And we'll take questions right after this. Chad Wolf, please.
Right behind you. Well, let me start off by thanking the President and the Vice President for their continued leadership and commitment for protecting the American people during this crisis. Early on, the President, again, took unprecedented actions to restrict travel from areas affected with the coronavirus. And to date, DHS has screened over 200,000 individuals coming back from those affected countries. This has been an immense undertaking, but one that the men and women of DHS have successfully accomplished. For emergency response, public health services, and individuals engaged in lawful cross-border trade. As the Secretary said, the agreements with both Canada and Mexico will go into effect on Saturday, March 21st. Furthermore, we're also working collaboratively with Canada and Mexico to take decisive joint action regarding individuals seeking entry between our ports of entry. The CDC order directs the Department to suspend the introduction of all individuals seeking to enter the U.S. without proper travel documentation. That's for both the northern and southern border. The CDC director has determined that the introduction and spread of the coronavirus in the Department's Border Patrol stations and detention facilities presents a serious danger to migrants, our frontline agents and officers, and the American people. So it's important to note that the Department currently apprehends foreign nationals from over 120 different countries around the world, the vast majority of those having coronavirus cases. Many of these individuals arrive with little or no identity, travel, or medical documentation, making public health risk determinations all but impossible. It's also important to note that the outbreak on our southern border would likely increase the strain on health systems in our border communities, taking away important and life-saving resources from American citizens. Tonight, again at midnight, we will execute the CDC order by immediately returning individuals arriving without documentation to Canada, Mexico, as well as a number of other countries without delay. And so, again, CBP is positioned to execute these measures as we continue to keep our borders secure and safe. Before I conclude, let me just wrap up by thanking the brave men and women of DHS, specifically CBP, and across the government for the work that they do day in and day out to keep the American people safe from the coronavirus. The Department has a number of frontline officers that have tested positive, as well as others who are self-quarantining, and that I am doing everything that I can to protect these patriots as they continue to defend our homeland during this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you. Yes, Secretary.
Today's announcement is just the latest in a long line of bold, decisive actions the President has taken to protect Americans from the coronavirus spreading across our borders. Custody. We're talking about significant numbers of illegal immigrants. From this past October through February, DHS has processed more than 21,000 inadmissible aliens at the northern border and more than 151,000 are drawing on an American healthcare system that is already fighting the coronavirus pandemic. That's why the President and his administration are taking these important steps to keep Americans and our immigration system safe from these health risks as part of our whole-of-government approach to combating the coronavirus. Thank you, Mr. President, for the work that you've been doing throughout this crisis to slow the spread of the coronavirus and to keep our country safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Maybe Tony or Deb, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we continue to review the data very carefully from around the globe, as I know many of you are. We continue to see signs that, again, individuals under 20, 19 and under may have severe disease, but majority and all have recovered to date. We still see that same trend. And frankly, from Italy, we're seeing another concerning trend, that the mortality in males know the level of risk, and I know you will also protect them in the same way. There just is not enough numbers at this time to really tell them if they're at additional risk or not in the same way that adults are. I don't have any new data. I can see the look on your face of saying, is she seeing something new? I don't have any new data, but I think it's important for us to be as honest with the American people as we can. And when we don't have data, be very clear that we don't know. Finally, no one is immune. I sometimes hear people on radio or others talking about, I'm immune to the virus. We don't know if the contagion levels are different in age groups, but we know it's highly contagious to everyone. Do not interpret mild or moderate disease as lack of contagion or that you're immune. You just happen to have a better immune system, an ability.
preventing people from coming in from one area when they can actually go into the other. So that's an important reason. Understand that there's a public health reason for doing that. The second thing I think is really important is what happened in New York today, what Governor Cuomo mentioned about an hour ago, some rather strong issues that have been addressed with his recommendations. Not recommendations, essentially orders. Now, we have a group of recommendations and guidelines that are applicable to the entire country. You know them. We've been over them. Yet there are places, regions, states, cities in this country that are being stressed much, much more than the country as a whole. Clearly, one of them was Washington. Another one was California. Governor Newsom made some very important, difficult decisions. Today, Governor Cuomo did the same thing. And I want to say I strongly support what he's doing. And one thing, as a New Yorker myself, for those of you who haven't figured out from my accent that I'm from New York, as a New Yorker, I know what New Yorkers can do. We're tough. I was in New York City on September 11th, 2001. And I know what the New Yorkers can do. So please, cooperate with your governor, cooperate with your mayor. It's very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. President. The White House Coronavirus Task Force met this morning. We continue at the President's direction to bring the full resources, not just of the federal government, but in full partnership with our state governments, businesses around America, and a partnership with the American people to respond to the threat of the coronavirus. And I know I can speak on behalf of the President with confidence when I say how inspired we are by the way the American people and American businesses are coming together to help defeat this virus in our country. Millions of Americans are putting into practice the President's 15-day guidelines, and we encourage everyone, even those that are not in areas with significant outbreak, to review these guidelines over the next week and more and put them into practice, and you'll continue to do your part. Later today, we'll be talking with manufacturers around the country, and the President and I continue to be inspired by the way American industry is stepping forward. We have businesses around the country that are literally volunteering to retrofit plants to help us meet the needs of our healthcare workers and our healthcare system in confronting the coronavirus. As the President mentioned yesterday, following his decision to put FEMA in the lead, the emergency declaration, we actually met with all the nation's governors from the FEMA National Response Coordination Center. The President and I, our entire team at the federal level, couldn't be more grateful for the efforts of all of our governors in implementing the guidance that is being issued, not only from our task force, but also in taking strong measures in their own communities to protect We reiterated to all of the governors that the president, by putting FEMA in the lead, will continue to implement a plan that is locally executed. On testing. Thanks to the president's involvement of commercial labs, the public and private partnership, more and more Americans are being tested every single day. And tomorrow, Admiral Gua and FEMA will update the American public on the status of testing and our support of state-based testing efforts that are literally expanding by the hour. On the subject we want to continue to urge every American and every American hospital and healthcare facility to postpone any elective medical procedures. This will free up bed space, free up masks, and I know how grateful the president is, and we all are. And let me close by saying, as all of our experts have said many times, while the threat of serious illness to the average American from the coronavirus remains low, every American among us by putting into practice the president's 15 days to slow the spread. And as the president said at the outset of his remarks, I know that millions of Americans are doing that just now, and the greatness of the American character is shining forth.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
You had a call with Senator Schumer. He says you've now agreed to invoke the Defense Production Act to actually make those medical supplies that hospitals say are in severe shortage. So 2 questions. Is that what you're doing now?
It is. I did it yesterday. We invoked it, I think, the day before. We signed it the evening of the day before. And invoked it yesterday. We have a lot of people working very hard to do ventilators and various other things, yes.
So you're using it now to tell businesses
We are
they need to
using
make
it.
ventilators, masks, respirators?
For certain things that we need,
Okay.
including some of the very important emergency. I would say ventilators, probably more masks to a large extent. We have millions of masks which are coming and which will be distributed to the states. The states are having a hard time getting them, so we're using the Act. The Act is very good for things like this. We have millions of masks that we've ordered. They will be here soon. We're having them shipped directly to states.
So you said you were signing this but not invoking it. This is what you said yesterday, and that you would only do so in a worst case scenario. So are we now at a worst case scenario?
We need to letters. Yes, Steve?
Governor Cuomo has done in New York, is there any more consideration to a national lockdown to keep people in their homes?
I don't think so. Essentially, you've done that in California, you've done that in New York. Those are really two hotbeds. Those are probably the two hottest of them all in terms of hotspots. I don't think so, because you go out to the Midwest, you go out to other locations, and they're watching it on television, but they don't have the same problems. They don't have, by any means, the same problem. New York, California, Miami, the governor's doing an excellent job. Governor DeSantis in Florida. We have some pretty hot spots in Florida, too. But we're and the state of Washington, of course, but that was largely, if you look at it, it was one nursing home that had problems like you wouldn't believe. So no, we're working with the governors, and I don't think we'll ever find that necessary.
We're about a week into your 15-day guidelines. Are you happy with the progress? Would you like to see?
I am happy. I am happy with it. We'll have to see what the results are at the end of 14 days, let's say. We'll know by the 15th day to see what we do. But I'm certainly honored by the way the American people are working, because it's work. It's work not to work. This is the first time this has ever happened. And we're working out a tremendous financial package for them so they don't work. Whoever heard of this? Usually you work out a financial package to get people working. We're asking people not to work. Social distancing, a new term that's become probably the hottest term there is. So, no, I'm very honored by the way the American people are taking this, I mean, so seriously. Yes, John?
Mr. President, a question for you and a question for Dr. Fauci, if I could.
I mean, I haven't spoken to a lot of the Republicans on it. We discussed it, and I don't like buybacks. I didn't like them the first time.
Are you and Senator Schumer?
So we're
on the same
discussing.
page?
We're discussing that. We're discussing many
Are
things.
you on the same page with Senator Schumer?
We're not so far away. I'll tell you, we're not very far away.
And to Dr. Fauci, if I could. Dr. Fauci, as was explained yesterday, there has been some promise with hydroxychloroquine, this potential therapy for people who are infected with coronavirus. Is there any evidence to suggest that, as with malaria, it might be used as a prophylaxis against COVID-19?
No, the answer is no, and the evidence that you're talking about, John, is anecdotal evidence. So as the commissioner of FDA and the president mentioned yesterday, we're trying to strike a balance between making something with a potential of an effect to the American people available at the same time that we do it under the auspices of a protocol that will give us information to determine if it's truly safe and truly effective. But the information that you're referring to specifically is anecdotal. It was not done in a controlled clinical trial, so you really can't make any definitive statement about it.
President, on that. On those therapies.
I think I'm without fan of that than maybe than anybody. But I'm a big fan, and we'll see what happens. And we all understand what the doctor said is 100% correct. It's early, but I've seen things that are impressive, and we'll see. We're going to know soon. We're going to know soon, including safety. But, when you get that safety, this has been prescribed for many years for people to combat malaria, which was a big problem, and it's very effective. It's a strong drug. So we'll see.
Fairly effective against SARS.
It was as has been described for many years, and everybody knows the levels of the negatives and the positives. But I will say that I am a man that comes from a very positive school when it comes to, in particular, one of these drugs. You may, and I'm not being overly optimistic or pessimistic. I sure as hell think we ought to give it a try. I mean, there's been some interesting things happened and some good, very good things. Let's see what happens. We have nothing to lose. You know the expression? What the hell do you have to lose? Okay?
So what do you say to Americans who are nearly 200? I'll just follow up.
John,
Nearly
go
200
ahead.
dead. What do you say to the Americans who are scared, though? I guess nearly 200 dead, 14,000 who are sick, millions, as you who are scared right now. What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say. Go ahead. I
I
think it's a very nasty question, and I think it's a very bad signal that you're putting out to the American people. The American people are looking for answers, and they're looking for hope. And you're doing sensationalism, and the same with NBC and Comcast. That's what it's called, yeah. Yes.
I would like, Dr. Fauci, if you don't mind, to follow up on what the president is saying. Should Americans have hope in this drug right now? And, sir, I would like to follow up on Peter's question here. Could you please address Americans in this country who are scared right now? This is a very valid concern that people have.
No, there really isn't that much of a difference in many respects with what we're saying. The president feels optimistic about something, his feeling about it. What I'm saying is that it might be effective. I'm not saying that it isn't. It might be effective, but as a scientist, as we're getting it out there, we need to do it in a way as while we are making it available for people who might want the hope that it might work, you're also collecting data that will ultimately show that it is truly effective and safe under the conditions of COVID-19. So there really isn't different. It's just a question of how one feels about it.
Is there any reason to believe it's not safe?
Well, certainly as a drug, any drug, John, has some toxicities. The decades of experience that we have with this drug indicate that the toxicities are rare and they are, in many respects, reversible. What we don't know is when you put it in the context of another disease, whether it's safe. Fundamentally, I think it probably is going to be safe. But I like to prove things first. So it really is a question of not a lot of difference. It's the hope that it will work versus proving that it will work. So I don't see big differences here.
I agree. A number that's much smaller than people originally thought. Who not to rely on, but our country has been incredible, the way they pulled together, including the fact that I just spoke to Senator Schumer. We had a wonderful conversation. We both want to get to a good solution, but it's been really, for me, watching and seeing people that weren't speaking, getting along well, because we all have one common aim, and that's to get rid of this invisible enemy, get rid of it fast, and then go back to the kind of economy that we had, and maybe even better. Yeah, please, in the back. No, in the back, please.
Mr. President, two questions, if you'll indulge me. The first question is, many small businesses are concerned that they have weeks, not months, and are worried about how long it'll take.
We're going to be helping them a lot. We're going to be focused, a big focus, and including my conversation with both Mitch and with Chuck, a big focus of that conversation with small businesses, because they are really the engine behind our country, more so than the big ones. They are the engine behind our country.
Second, if I may, sir, are you concerned about members of Congress that may have used information they learned on updates to sell stocks and profit off of this?
I'm not aware of it. I saw some names. I know all of them. I know everyone mentioned Dianne Feinstein, I guess, and a couple of others. I don't know too much about what it's about, but I find them to all be very honorable people. That's all I know. And they do nothing wrong. I a good journalist when it comes to fairness.
But he's asking for your message to the country.
Oh, I think
You
it's a
went
good
off on
message,
Peter.
because I think that the country has to understand that there is indeed, whether we like it or not, and some of the people in this room won't like it, there's a lot of really great news and great journalism, and there's a lot of fake news out there. And I hear it all, and I see it all, and I understand it all because I'm in the midst of it. So when somebody writes a story or does a story on television, and I know it's false, I know it's fake, and when they say they have 15 sources have said, and I know there's no sources, they're just making it up. I know that, and I call Peter out, but I call other people out too. And, you know, this is a time to come together, but coming together is much harder when we have dishonest journalists. It's a very important profession that you're in. It's a profession that I think is incredible. I cherish it. But when people are dishonest, they truly do hurt our country. Yeah, in the back. Please, go ahead.
Mr. President, China has been in communication with the United States and also WHO about coronavirus
Right,
in
that's true.
January.
That's
and
true.
the U.S. shut its border to travelers from China on February the 2nd. Also, Wuhan has been in lockdown since January the 24th. And this all happened almost 2 months ago. Why did you still say if you could have known it earlier? And also, you have been calling coronavirus.
Well, I have to say this. We have, and I can speak for myself, but I have a very good relationship with China and with President Xi. I have great respect for President Xi. I consider him to be a friend of mine. It's unfortunate that this got out of control. It came from China. It got out of control. Some people are upset. I know President Xi. He loves China. He respects the United States. And I have to say, I respect China greatly, and I respect President Xi. Okay?
Coronavirus.
Can I ask more about stock buybacks? Many of the airlines and Boeing did stock buybacks. Is this a deal breaker for you in this?
No, but I never liked stock buybacks from their standpoint. When we did a big tax cut, and when they took the money and did buybacks, that's not building a hangar, that's not buying aircraft, that's not doing the kind of things that I want them to do. And we're now talking about buybacks. We didn't think we would have had to restrict it because we thought they would have known better. But they didn't know better. In some cases, not in all cases, obviously. Some people did an incredible job. They built plants all over the country. I mean, you'd see what's happened. I mean, we were doing, until this invisible enemy appeared, we never had an economy like this. But there were some companies that used that money to buy back stock, driving up the price of the stock artificially in many cases. I don't like that. I don't like it. And as far as whether or not we'll
Define that is all work. Anyone with a work visa can still cross the border. Can you define what, like, the measures that you're taking?
That's a great question. We're working. We're very real concerned about H-2A visas, in particular. Agricultural workers need to get across. We're going to make sure that we do everything we can to keep that part of our economic lifeblood working between our two countries. DHS and the State Department will work together. We want to make sure and keep commerce between Canada, the United States, and Mexico alive, functional, and prepared for the day that this economy bounces back like we expected it will.
Mr. Secretary, the Mexican government has not announced any travel ban on Europe. Where have you been in touch with them as to when they're going to do this and what it is that they're telling you? And then a second question, they also are telling us and said in a press conference this morning that they will not take back any non-Mexican citizen. Any other third parties will have to, we don't know what will happen to them. So can you address what will happen to those third country immigrants that you are saying that will not be allowed to enter the U.S. and Mexico is saying that they will not be allowed to stay in Mexico either or sent back from the U.S.?
If I may, I'll take the first one, and then, Chad, I'll give you the second one. With respect to travel into Mexico from outside, I spoke with Foreign Minister Ebrard a couple of times about this. I'm very confident we're going to get to a really good place that protects the Mexican people and the American people from those who might be traveling into places where we've got designations, the Schengen zone from China, so that they're not coming into Mexico and then coming into the United States. I'm very confident we'll do that, and we'll make that announcement shortly, together.
And again, as we implement the CDC's order, again, we're going to take a number of individuals that cross the border illegally and repatriate them or remove them quickly back to Mexico.
There are coordinated efforts to disparage what America is doing in our activity to do all the things that President Trump has set in motion here. Well, they'll last as long as we need to do it to protect the American people from the virus. I couldn't tell you how long. about this. We're doing everything we can to facilitate both the humanitarian
Excuse me, we'll do it in a second. Mike, yes.
May I just have one more thing? There's been some discussion about China and what they knew and when they knew it, and I've been very critical. We need to know immediately. On multiple
of lives and even millions of lives potentially. You don't know where it goes, but you could be talking about millions of lives. So if you look at the world, I mean, you have some very smart people in the world, you have some smart leaders in the world, and everybody's doing it the way we're doing it. I think we're doing a better job than hopefully most, if not all. We're doing a very effective job, but we'll know better in 14 or 15 days. But, you know, you're talking about hundreds of thousands, and maybe more than that, numbers of people. And, you know, we can bring our finances back very quickly. We can't bring the people back.
Mr. President, to follow up on that, there are millions of people out there that share that view, that say, I don't really need to shut things down, I don't really need to stay away from stores, I can go to the beach. And those people making multiple actions exponentially, it's the difference between life and death.
Yeah, I agree with it, but I think I'd like to have Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two things. In New York, where cases are doubling every day, they fear that supplies are going to run out in a matter of weeks. Yesterday, Mayor Bill de Blasio called on you to mobilize the military to deliver urgent supplies. Yesterday, he said, quote, "The fate of New York City rests in the hands of one man. He is a New Yorker, and right now he is betraying the city he comes from." I've personally spoken to emergency department nurses who say that they've been told not to wear N95 masks because supplies are so low. So how do you respond to those remarks by Mayor de Blasio?
Well, I just think this.
And doctors looking to you, when will those supplies arrive?
I'm not dealing with him. I'm dealing with the governor, and the governor agrees with me, and I agree with him. So far, we've been very much in sync. I guess they're not agreeing with each other necessarily, but the relationship with New York, I love New York. I grew up in New York, as you probably have heard, and the relationship's been very good. And I think government and the get the economy back, it's going to all come back to us very quickly. It comes back very quickly. We have a tremendous a lot of people think that I'm right about that, that once we defeat the virus, I think you're going to have a very steep, like a rocket ship, it's going to go up, and everything will be back. And I really believe we're going to be stronger than ever before. Yeah, go ahead.
President, on the issue of supplies, you've told governors to try to find whatever supplies they can on their own. But some of them are now saying when they go to try to buy them, they're being outbid by the federal government.
Well, you heard my news conference yesterday. So not that was sort of yesterday's news. No, that does happen because they want to buy supplies. We want to buy as a backup to them in case they can, and sometimes that will happen. But regardless of who gets them, when they need them, we're getting them to them. Now, we're doing the Production Act. We're doing it very much, and we have a lot of things cooking right now at a high level. Remember this. Nothing like this has ever happened before. Over 140 countries. And you have supply chains that are broken down for two reasons, because they can't supply that much and because people are sick and they can't be on the chain. So you have a lot of interesting things all over the world. You have supply chains that broke down because of the illness and also because of the fact, the quantity. But we're getting it ordered, we're getting it done, and you just have to, look, some of you were at the call yesterday where I spoke with the governors, almost all of the governors, and every one of them was very impressed with what we've done. Go ahead, in the middle, please.
There are reports saying that the Labor Department has told states not to disclose their unemployment numbers. Do you agree with that decision?
I'd have to talk to him. I would have to talk to him.
Just one more clarifying question, if I could. On the DPA, I just want to be clear. Are you saying that the administration is requiring these industries to create these products, or just asking?
You know, so far we haven't had to. It's an amazing thing that happened. We're getting calls from automobile Go ahead.
marketplace that they are perfectly free to use. We've actually had to put out some common myths and truths about that. For instance, the other day, we were getting calls from governors saying, we don't have swabs, there are no swabs, there are no swabs. Our supply people went in the open marketplace and bought 200,000 swabs in the open market, and I just sent a letter to every governor sending them swabs. So some of it's just they aren't listening or checking with us about all the freedom, all the capacities out there. It's a complex system with 330 million Americans and all of these labs. So sometimes there's a lab that doesn't understand how much flexibility they have and how much supply there is out there. And we're working through the new FEMA Integration Center to help correct that for folks.
Secretary Azar.
Be happy to.
How well that's working.
Well, as I said, more and more tests are being performed every day. And as we learn about the results that are being reported around the country of coronavirus tests, our experts continue to look at the numbers and see that some 90% of Americans that are tested do not test positive for the coronavirus. And so it can give you a sense of the magnitude of testing that's going on. We have the number of cases that we've reported today, but it's in some cases near to 10 times that have been tested. But let me also emphasize how important it was in answering these questions for governors and local officials that the President purchasing. And you can contract the coronavirus, have very mild symptoms, if any, not even be aware that you have it, and expose someone who is vulnerable to a very serious health outcome. That's the reason why we're encouraging people to avoid groups of more than 10, to not eat in restaurants, but to use drive-thrus, to wash their hands on a regular basis. And particularly, we're going to continue, as the President has directed us, to focus on the most vulnerable population.
Something, we order something. And as you know, 2 days ago, I invoked the act, which was a big step. I'm not sure that it had been done before, certainly not very much. And when we need something, we will use the act. What has happened is, before we even go out, many, many companies, great companies, companies in a totally different business are willing to do things and make things, because that's what they do. They make product. They're willing to make product for us, medical product, that we need very badly for the states, that the states can't get, they haven't been able to get. And you know, most of the states, in no way did they do anything wrong. They were stocked up. They were all equipped. Unfortunately, they've never had a thing like this. So they need help from the federal government.
But you haven't actually directed any secretaries. This is important. You haven't actually directed any companies to start making more ventilators.
automakers right now who are retooling their production facilities to make ventilators or
I can't say
masks?
they are, but they will be very shortly because we're working with one in particular that wants to make ventilators. They called us yesterday, and we're working on a transaction. They're going to make ventilators. They say they've done it before, which surprised me, but they can do it very easily.
Secretary, this is partially for you, partially for Secretary.
Disappears over a period of time. And these ships are very clean. They've been kept very clean. They've been gone over. But the virus, as you know, if it's on a surface for certain, they have actually charts, different kinds of surfaces, it disappears over a period of time.
Choose hotels.
I mean, what do you also?
Okay, thank you. And so for Dr. Fauci, there's new research out that the CDC has released that many of the people that have, or that 13% of the people with the coronavirus got it from someone that was asymptomatic. So my question is, does that change the way, the approach that should be taken? And do you think that's the case, or do you think that, or do you not agree with that research?
You know, the recommendations that are here applies to whether you're in physical contact with someone who could be infected with symptoms versus asymptomatic. I don't really think it changes anything. Certainly, there is some degree of asymptomatic transmissibility. It's still not quite clear exactly what that is. But when people focus on that, I think they take their eye off the real ball, which is the things you do will mitigate against getting infected, no matter whether you're near someone who is asymptomatic or not. It's the same thing. Physical separation and the care that's outlined here is going to take care of both of those things.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question about testing. When will every American who needs a test get a test and be able to get a test? And why not have medical equipment being shipped right now to hospitals who need it?
You're hearing very positive things about testing, and just so you understand, we don't want every American to go out and get a test. 350 million people. We don't want that. We want people that are that have a problem, that have a problem with they're sneezing, they're sniffling, they don't feel good, they have a temperature. There are a lot of different things. You know them better than I do. So ready? We don't need that. But what we are having is we're having these private labs have come and they've been really fantastic. And we also have a great system for the future. Because as I said, we inherited, meaning this administration, an obsolete, broken system that wasn't meant for anything like this. Now we have a system that you can see, because look, we're well into this and nobody's even talking about it except for you, which doesn't surprise.
that you want to really ratchet it up, like Governor Newsom is doing in California, like Governor Cuomo is doing in New York, or how you put an end to this outbreak. Testing is important. It would be nice to know, and there are certain things you could do, but let's not conflate testing with the action that we have to take. Whether or not you test, do this. I'm not putting down testing as an important issue, but people seem to link them so much that if you don't have universal testing, you can't respond to the outbreak. You really can.
But I do think, and that's after listening to Tony and everybody else that's an expert, I do think it's important that not everybody be tested. If you feel great and if you have no symptoms whatsoever, it's just not a good thing to be doing. All right, Steve?
A question for Dr. Fauci. Yesterday you mentioned the possibility
what is the demand pressure on testing in this country, and are we meeting it?
I get the same calls that many of you get, that someone goes into a place who has a symptom and wants to get a test, and for one reason or other, and others have said, right now that we have the private sector involved, the availability, not only just availability, of the availability is getting better and better and better. Having said that, I understand and empathize with the people who rightfully are saying, I'm trying to get a test and I can't.
So is that a way of saying we are not yet at a point where we are meeting the demand pressure?
Well, the answer is yes, John. We are not there yet, because otherwise people would be never calling up saying they can't get a test.
Well, I just can't emphasize enough about the incredible progress that we have made on testing. All of you are reporting, and media outlets around the country are as well, that many, many more tests are being performed every day, literally by the tens of thousands. And this has only been made possible because several weeks ago the President brought in the commercial labs, these enormous companies, Quest and LabCorp, working with companies like Roche and Abbott Laboratories and Thermo Fisher, and said, we have this existing system of state laboratories and the CDC processing tests for certain infections. But given the magnitude of this outbreak, the President apprehended early on that it wouldn't be enough to meet the need. And I just want every American to know that literally hour by hour, in partnership with these extraordinary commercial labs, we are making more and more tests available every day. We'll detail the way that we're working with states to distribute those tests. We've obviously focused on states that have been dealing with the most serious outbreaks of coronavirus: Washington State, California, New York, and others. We've been making sure the tests are in those areas, working closely with those governors. But I think the American people should be encouraged at the progress that we are making. Tomorrow we'll take some time to detail that progress for you, but I would say to any American who might be concerned that they have symptoms, as the President said so well, we don't want every healthy American to get a test. But if people feel that they have symptoms that they identify with the coronavirus, call your doctor. Their doctor can call their state health authorities that can work very closely with our entire team through HHS and FEMA and work to identify the more and more tests that are available every day.
Just so you know, just for the probably 100th time, this administration, inherited an obsolete, broken, old system that wasn't meant for this. We discarded that system, and we now have a new system that can do millions of people as you need them. But we had to get rid of a broken old system that didn't work. It worked only on a very limited basis. And we're very proud of what we've done. It's incredible what we've done. And this system will now serve for the future, for future problems. Hopefully you don't have a problem like this, but something will come up. We have now a great system, and it's almost fully in gear, but it's able to test millions of people. But we inherited a broken, old, frankly, a terrible system. We fixed it, and we've done a great job. And we haven't been given the credit that we deserve, that I can tell you. But the one that really deserves the credit are the American people, because they are doing things that nobody thought they would do. What they're doing is incredible, and we're making a lot of progress, and we'll see you folks tomorrow. Thank you very much.